Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Nic Cage Fight Podcast, where I describe films in pedantic detail. Ryan dazzles us with his knowledge of cinema in general, and Rich teaches Ryan and I a little lesson about how professional wrestling works. Also helps riff with me about gas station dick pills. I'm one of your hosts, Josh, joined as always by the aforementioned Rich and Ryan, here to wrap up our review of Army of One. How are we feeling?
I thought we were here to learn the true meaning of friendship.
I mean, we
No,
are,
that's
but that's sort of more of our nebulous goal. You know what I mean?
Okay.
yeah, and this is how I'm feeling right now, which is yeah.
You think
If
Cage
you don't-
is just doing a Wesley Willis this whole movie?
So if you don't stop me, this is gonna keep going.
Are they gonna fucking are we gonna get copyright struck for a Wesley Willis song?
I hope not.
I think we're within the time limit to be able to argue fair use,
Yeah.
but who knows? We don't have an on-staff counsel. So where we last left our protagonist, Gary, he had woken up in Mexico after trying to sail to Pakistan, not knowing anything about sailing. He heads back to Marcy's, and again, we get more of this charm bit where he has brought back seashells and souvenirs for Marcy and Lizzie. Later, Gary's watching TV, and all the channels he watches are commenting on Osama bin Laden. He also, this is a weird scene, he lands on a channel where the director of the film, I'm almost positive it's the director of the film,
It is 100%. I checked.
is hosting a show called Books and Shit, which is that's a solid name for a show, and he is interviewing God about his sequel to the Old Testament.
It's called the New Testament.
Yeah, which is a bit funny. Then we get God's Got Talent, where he is doing some sort of weird bubble art, and then like a home shopping channel advertising a samurai sword for Gary specifically.
This brought me back to I don't know if you've ever seen the Home Movies episode where Coach McGurk buys a bunch of swords on QVC. Yeah. And he's like trying to use one of the swords to pay for his groceries, and he's all like, well, this is a replica of Excalibur. It might have magical powers.
By the way, another important part running up to this is Gary and Marcy are officially an item, as is implied by the film. Gary gets this samurai sword, of course. And the next day, Marcy is throwing oranges to Gary, who is cutting them out of the air with said samurai sword.
This is very true to life for me.
Yeah.
Who hasn't done this?
I was gonna say I don't know anybody who has not done this.
I was say we had like an Asian shop in one of our malls that people just went to buy samurai swords.
Oh shit! I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah,
I know you are, because they also sold furniture, but nobody bought the furniture there. They bought the samurai swords.
They bought the samurai swords and like the fucking ballad songs and like all
furniture
the weird knives
and swords and shit. I love that store.
It's a great store.
Yeah, it was right next to the video game store that was run by the local pedophile.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. But also, I mean, like every fucking mall has a store with these. This is where the pejorative mall ninja comes from. Like when you have a bunch of fucking cheap replica blades and stuff like that.
Oh, I'm gonna make the opening photo to this episode just Ben Shapiro as a fucking mall ninja.
Yeah.
I'm assuming everybody's seen that photo.
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah. Meanwhile, our apolitical listeners will be like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah. But then again, I mean, these people are mainstream recognizable, at least in my opinion, at this point. So who knows?
Yeah.
It might have a broader audience than you'd think. So Gary has a new plan, which is to go to Israel and then hang glide into Pakistan. And it's fine, even though he doesn't know how to hang glide, because he's going to do it over the Dead Sea, where
Israel is nowhere close to Pakistan.
Yeah.
I had to look it up. I had to look it up to make sure that I wasn't fucking crazy. It's like you have Israel, you have the Dead Sea, you have like 600 miles, then you have Pakistan.
Yeah, so this is one of the divergences from the real life story. Apparently, the real Gary Faulkner went to Israel to practice hand gliding. It wasn't necessarily his plan to hang glide from Israel into Pakistan. I
Okay.
guess. I don't fucking know.
Why did he go to? Can he practice in Colorado?
Maybe, but Colorado doesn't have the Dead Sea. Remember, if he crashes in the Dead Sea, he'll just float
Yeah,
because of the saline
salt.
content,
Yeah, salt content.
All
which
right,
is
go to Utah
important
then.
because he doesn't know how to swim.
No,
Which
no one
again,
should
I
go to
need to point
Utah,
out.
Rich.
Which again, I need to point out is a fact that's dropped in this movie after he tries to sail to Pakistan. Which, by the way, in real life, Gary made 2 attempts to sail to Pakistan. The first one ended up with him in Mexico, and the second one, I can't remember what happened, but he ends up selling the boat for the money, excuse me, to buy a ticket on a plane.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good call.
So at this point, this was a bit of a gag. I thought it was a gag at the time, and I think they kind of intended it to play that way. The ramp that Gary built in the background is nicer than the old one, but all of the edges are uneven. He's like laid down planks of 2x4s, and they're not lined up or shaved off the sides at all, so it's kind of funny. But then we get a scene where Gary goes to like a sports shop for a hang glider, and he finds one decaled like the American flag, like we saw in the opening scene, and then very slapstick style knocks over a row of kayaks. After which a an employee comes out, and Gary is asking him a number of questions about hang gliding, but most importantly, the fact that he wants to tape a boombox to the hang glider and what good music to hang glide to is. And the
Yeah,
guy's like,
not
"You
not
want
how to do it, but like, what
yeah."
would you suggest?
And the guy's like, "Well, you want to pump yourself up a bit, right? So like Tom Petty."
And he
And
says
Gary's
they're the
like,
stupidest fucking idea he's ever heard.
"Yes." Which is a bit ham-fisted, but it's a setup that pays off like 5 minutes later because Gary also tells this guy that he's planning on cutting apart the hang glider so he can take it in his luggage to Israel. And the guy's like, "Don't do that. That's not what they're designed for at all." And so, of course, we cut to Gary hacksawing apart the hang glider to take it in his luggage to Israel. At the airport, he's just holding his samurai sword like as carry on, and the lady at the desk is like, "You can't take a sword on a plane." And he's like, "That's ridiculous. This is America." And she's like, "In America you can't take a fucking samurai sword as carry on onto a plane, even pre 9/11."
Yeah.
This was frowned upon strongly. So God shows up, of course, and Gary then tucks the samurai sword in his checked luggage, right? And flies to Israel. And now we see him there with his reassembled hang glider, and he goes to jump off the cliff to hang glide. And there's a funny bit because as he runs to do this, of course, the song that plays over it is "Free Fallin'"
Yeah.
by Tom Petty. And of course, the glider collapses, and Gary breaks his arm and leg, which we see him in traction back at Marcy's in the next scene.
Yeah.
And he's smoking weed and showing her gifts he got from Israel, including water from the Jordan River for Lizzie, and a little bottle filled with rocks that is labeled Israel Rocks for Marcy. Marcy and Gary admit to each other that they love each other at this point. Gary ruins it a little bit by asking her to show him his tattoo behind the hedgerow real quick. and that's a bit funny, but Marcy is clearly getting tired of the Pakistan plan, the plan to capture bin Laden.
The Pekka plan, if you will.
Yeah.
I was going to make that joke when I was trying to figure out if I would call it Packus plan or Pack plan.
Yeah, I know. I was doing the same exact thing, like how it fits, but how
Great
exactly
minds.
does it fit?
So after expressing some displeasure with Gary's plan to go back to trying to get into Pakistan, Gary suggests, what if instead, I stay here? And Marcy says she doesn't want him to become resentful of her keeping him from doing this. So, while she doesn't agree with his plan, she doesn't want him staying on account of her, and then ending up resenting her. So Gary, we see at the bar talking to Pickles and Roy about maybe abandoning the Pakistan mission. And then when Pickles and Roy leave, God shows up and basically shames Gary into, or threatens, really. He says he's going to smite Gary and his memory from the earth entirely if he doesn't go through with his mission. Gary kind of rightfully complains that God isn't helping him. And God's like, these are missions. They're not easy to do. They're a challenge and you have to do them or you're going to get smited. So Gary goes back to see Marcy and tell her what's going on. He's drunk. She is disappointed with this. And he rants again about the bin Laden thing. Marcy shuts the door on him. And then the next morning, Gary is finishing up the ramp, trimming off those uneven sides. And Marcy apologizes for how she reacted the night before. And Gary says to not apologize and he will see her when he gets back from Pakistan. So Gary sets off again and he needs to get an entry visa into Pakistan. When he goes to the office to get an entry visa, he explains explicitly what he is going there to do. He's like, I'm going there to capture bin Laden. And the guy working the desk is like, Osama bin Laden. And this was another line I wrote down, which is, no, Harold bin Laden, which is pretty funny. Impossibly, this guy approves Gary's entry visa. And off to Pakistan, Gary goes, talking to everybody on the flight about how he's planning on capturing bin Laden. So in Pakistan, Gary's riding around in a cab, talking his usual nonsense, but the cab driver is oddly, well, not oddly, I guess, but is overly polite and nice and humoring Gary with his bizarre mission. So Gary goes out to do reconnaissance, and he is openly wearing his samurai sword on his hip. It's basically a ton of goofball scenes of him like shopping and checking into his hotel, and a funny bit at a kebab stand where like this guy is cooking meat and nobody's coming by, and Gary is like, you got to talk to the meat, that's how you bring in the customers. And so Gary gets behind there, and of course there's like a whole crowd of people like waving money in front of it in the next scene, where Gary is again saying nonsense about cooking meats and whatnot.
Yeah, where like I didn't know if that was delusion or not.
Yeah, because there's a few scenes in this that might not be like canon within the actual events of the film. They might just be Gary hallucinating because he's not on dialysis, or like having it going into a fugue state because he's too drunk.
Almost all of it is likely wild speculation and pure fantasy nonsense.
Yeah.
I think all of it springs explicitly from a quote that the real Gary Faulkner gave when he got back, that he found the local populace friendly and welcoming. So who knows? But also, they in this film, they condense most of his time in Pakistan into this singular trip, where in reality, Gary was back and forth overseas like 8 fucking times.
Yeah, he went over, I think I read 9 is what I is the
Well,
number
okay,
that I
so
think.
the
8.
official number was 7, but he claimed 11 is
Okay.
what I read.
Yeah, the official number being 7 is because there were a number of times he went and didn't have a visa, so they just put him back on a plane and sent him back. So he never actually got there. Technically, he never got out of the airport, at least, right?
Yeah,
right.
So on day 2, he makes chicken wings for the hotel staff.
Can't find that molasses though.
Yeah, that was another one of the ridiculous scenes. He walks into a spice shop. Although I do like the spice shop looked really cool, and there was like a fucking walls of spices. And Gary
that
says,
seemed like my kind of scene, honestly.
And Gary says exactly what I would say when walking into that place is like, you guys appear to have so many exotic spices. But it falls apart when he asks for molasses, and just everybody in the store seems to start scolding him. He's like, no, he's like, I'm not saying asses, I'm saying molasses. He insists on keep on enunciating it that way though. Anyway, so he makes chicken wings for the hotel staff, but he breaks a molar while eating one. So he goes to a street dentist, and this portrayal is probably a little derogatory. I'm not certain.
I don't know how
don't travel
dentistry
too
works
often.
in Pakistan.
It's played up though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's like there's a bunch of people watching them, probably gambling on them.
Yeah, and the guy's got like literal pliers in his mouth and shit. But later he's smoking weed out of an improvised can pipe with some of the locals.
That also was very true to life for me. That brought me back to shortly after high school when I was heavily smoking weed every day. And yeah, you gotta make yourself a little can bong, can pipe.
My favorite is at the end of this smoking montage. Nic Cage goes, "Spice." So then he starts wandering around Pakistan high as shit. He walks into like an arcade or like youth center and fixes their pinball machine by kicking it.
He Fonzies it, yeah.
Yeah. And then he waves around some cash and a guy grabs it and runs through the streets. So Gary gives chase. The guy runs through a mosque at prayer time and Gary follows. It disrupts the congregation, but the thief gets away. At this point, Gary hears a scream from somewhere else. And when he goes to investigate, he arrives and advertisements are playing. It's very jarring. All right. Here is a clip from the movie and the ads he might have heard.
Trying to find a good part of the movie to play.
I was about to cut back in. Truly harrowing stuff. But no, Gary actually wanders into some sort of minor domestic dispute of some sort, which he starts to make a scene about, and then more people show up. And this is when he fucking pulls his samurai sword and chases the looky-loos away. It's a bonkers scene. And at this point, we finally get a glimpse of Rainn Wilson and Dennis O'Hare's CIA agent characters temporarily headquartered somewhere in Pakistan. I honestly, I think the text on screen literally says CIA headquarters, but I don't think they mean it like that sounds like it, you know?
Yeah.
But Agent Simmons, that's Rainn Wilson's character, briefs his superior on Gary's presence in the area, which the only bit with these CIA guys is like completely misunderstanding that Gary is just a wacky dude here of his own volition.
Yeah, they think that God is his handler, and
there's a whole bit with
they keep calling him the American Samurai.
The American Samurai is not a bad description. Honestly,
no,
if you were going to shorthand dude who showed up from America into Pakistan with a samurai sword and a big knife and a gun, although I'm assuming they didn't know that until the end. I also don't. It's a little bit murky after reading the real life details of where he got that gun, considering it was back and forth from Pakistan, and it was like a Chinese made semi-automatic pistol with no safety.
Yeah.
That he supposedly, I think he bought it illegally in Pakistan. I just don't know if he like fucking stored it somewhere there and retrieved it each time.
Wait, but did he complain about
it back and forth?
Did he complain about it being Chinese?
No. Well, again, I don't know how many analogs there were between the movie and real life. There's no indication that he complained about the Chinese made pistol. So we see Gary, and at this point, it's day 5, according to the film. And he's practicing with a samurai sword in his hotel room. The agents are trying to find out more about him. Then we get like a rush of days and semi-funny scenes, I guess. We go through days 8 through 14 into like 16 and 19, and like more time is passing between them. And then finally, we're at day 31 in Pakistan, and we're back to the agents, where they're arguing about Rainn Wilson's character, Simmons, wants to go undercover And his boss is like, undercover is what are you talking about? And he's like, well, not as like a local, but like an expat living abroad. You know what I mean? And he's like, you're obsessed with James Bond. And they have a brief argument about James Bonds where Simmons says that Timothy Dalton is the best Bond of all time, which
is correct.
Straight
It's
to jail
incorrect.
territory.
Yeah, it's straight to jail territory. No, like, but they keep leading into it and they never resolve it. His actual like choice was George fucking Lesenby because they name every other Bond.
Well, that was his boss's favorite because
his boss's favorite, yeah.
Yeah, when Simmons was like
Sean Connery, and he's like, no.
And he's like,
Roger Moore?
A Connery fan? He's like, no.
The new guy with the gritty movies? No, not that Russian.
yeah. That one got me.
And they don't mention Pierce Brosnan, but I'm definitely assuming he's talking about George fucking Lesenby and not Pierce Brosnan.
So after this bit, they discuss Gary. The agents discuss how they can't let Gary get anywhere near anywhere they're looking for bin Laden because that would be a disaster. So they plan to bring him in. Gary, meanwhile, is watching TV and hallucinates a weird like MTV Crib style show with Osama bin Laden, which is bizarre.
That was weird.
Yeah.
There's like small bit, like the whole bit was kind of awkward. But I did like the one where he introduces the one guy. He's like, this guy makes all the white guys terrified. We call him Milkshake. That guy.
I also liked him pointing at the George W. Bush picture. He's like, the baddest motherfucker on the planet right here.
Yeah, that was something. But otherwise, it was bizarre.
Yeah.
Very.
Yeah. And they didn't even mention how much Animal Crossing bin Laden played.
No references to Animal Crossing at all, actually.
Or didn't he have like a 97-hour Final Fantasy VII save as well?
Did he? Shit, I don't remember that.
So, Gary's back out on the streets with his sword hitchhiking. A truck pulls up and it's being driven by God. Gary asks God again why he doesn't help by giving him a hint about where bin Laden is. And God gives a pretty shitty motivational speech. The narrator pipes up at this point, letting us know that Gary is losing his grip on reality due to the whole not getting dialysis and smoking, according to Gary, quote, a shit ton of weed. This tracks a little bit with real life because when he finally did get nabbed, he did have hashish on him.
Well,
so it is not outside the realm of possibility he was smoking it up while he was there. He thinks he sees bin Laden. He thinks he passes bin Laden in the street and that he's being watched. He steals a moped and rampages through a street market before crashing and being grabbed by a group of policemen at this point. Next, we see Gary being questioned by the CIA agents. He tells them that he tries telling them, I'm here on a mission from God. I'm here to capture bin Laden. And it's all on God's orders. And the agents are like, who's your handler? Who do you work for? Mossad, MI6, shit like that. And when he mentions God, he's like, is that your handler? Basically, the whole thing is played up for chuckles. And then they say they're sending him back to America and grounding him, basically blacklisting him from flights. The no-fly list, a very relatively well-known thing, right?
Yeah.
So Gary packs up his stuff from the hotel and says goodbye to the staff, who are very friendly to him. This is a bit charming and funny, but as he's saying goodbye to the guard of the hotel, someone shoots at them, hitting the security guard, causing Gary to flee back inside the hotel and up the stairs. He sees the shooter on the opposing roof and tries to rush over the rooftops after them, but immediately falls to the street level. Luckily, the shooter is down there and getting on a dirt bike of some sort and fleeing. He finds a taxi, and it happens to be driven by his original cab driver friend when he first arrived, and he tells him to follow the shooter on the cycle. They lose track of him, and the cab driver is like, we've been just driving around for 2 hours. And Gary believes this guy is Al-Qaeda, and following him will lead them to bin Laden. Gary spots a cyclist. I think it's supposed to vaguely look like the shooter, but probably be somebody different considering the fact that they lost him 2 hours beforehand.
Yeah, that's the vibe I got.
And so he has to abandon the cab and continue on foot. Larry sneaks up the hill and like peeks around a boulder where there's two like goat herders who just sort of wave at him. He's like, shit. He thought he was like at bin Laden's hideout. That night, Gary is sitting by a fire and is visited by God, who tells him he's closer than he's ever been to bin Laden. And then God expresses regret in making mankind be like conscious beings at all. It's bizarre.
I mean, that's correct. We would have been better as just fucking like paramecium.
Just make us rocks.
Humanity was a mistake.
Did you use paramecium specifically because God explicitly says paramecium and explains what that is to Gary in the film?
That was just the first like basic simple organism that popped into my head at that exact moment.
Fair enough. Amoeba was right there, but
it was right there.
Yeah, but if people weren't around, we would not have had rock and roll McDonald's.
That is so true. You're right. Wesley Willis has actually proved that humanity is worth existing. So look, Spider-Man beat his ass.
So we cut to essentially the scene of Gary flying, just like we saw in the beginning of the film, over bin Laden's cave. We white out to Gary waking up in a chair. It looks like he's hooked up to a dialysis machine in bin Laden's cave, who looks like he's getting dialysis as well. I think that's supposed to be what's happening.
Yeah. Also, definitely a lack of dialysis hallucination on Gary's part.
Of course.
Absolutely, yeah.
So Gary is now confronting the target of this whole trip. And he's pretty giddy about it. Gary is laughing at bin Laden, and bin Laden's telling him not to laugh. And they both pull out their IVs at the same time and rush over to two samurai swords to have a sword fight. This is, again, played up as a bit of slapstick comedy. At one point, they both get their samurai swords stuck in the roof of the cave, but they pull it out. There's a great bit where the first time they swing their samurai swords at each other full strength and they just clang together, both of them drop the swords. They're like, that hurts my hands so much. And then when Gary retrieves his sword, he starts like dancing around and singing, which prompts bin Laden to say, quote, "fucking fight normally," which is another one I wrote down because that one did make me laugh. So Gary gets a couple good strikes in and manages to batter the sword from bin Laden's hand, and then wakes up in a hospital bed where the CIA agents are standing over him. He was apparently found in an empty field, passed out. They start yelling back and forth at each other about bin Laden. Gary is insistent that he found bin Laden and the CIA ruined it and they let him get away. But the whole thing just sort of fades out kind of to white noise. And then we see a number of agents, not just our two, but a bunch of men in suits and sunglasses escorting Gary into the airport to send him back home. He is, in fact, shipped back to America and goes to Marcy's, of course, who is excited to see him. Gary gives Lizzie a dress that he bought her while he was in Pakistan, and sort of regales them with tales about how fantastic his time there was. And Marcy tells Gary she called a radio station that wants to interview him. And the doorbell rings, and when Gary opens it, there's like a ton of people with microphones. I can't he like exclaims when he opens up the door. He's like, "What the fuck?" There's a bunch of people outside like shoving microphones at him. And so Gary goes on a bit of an interview tour. His doctor hears an interview where he's explaining about how he lied to his doctor and bought a sailboat with the money. His doctor is not happy to hear this.
He's just like, God damn it.
His friends are listening at the bar. Marcy is listening in her car. There's a great, one of my favorite bits, even though I know it's super cheap. It's super cheap. They knew what they were doing, but it still fucking got me. To be fair, I'm a guy who started a Nic Cage fight podcast with my friends, so I'm the exact target audience here. But we get a scene of Nic Cage breaking the fourth wall, where as Gary talks about them licensing this story for a movie and who he wants to play him, and he wants Nic Cage to play him. specifically referencing Con Air because he looks kind of like Nic Cage from Con Air.
Yeah.
Mentioning one of our Holy Trinity films of all things during a fourth wall break where Nic Cage plays a character talking about Nic Cage playing him.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
I like that one. We cut back to Marcy's after this burst of popularity for Gary. And Gary tells her he's planning on going back to Pakistan. The mission's not over. And Marcy is annoyed like she has been multiple times when this comes up, but they essentially avoid the conversation for the moment. Later, Gary is watching the TV and sees the Obama announcement about the killing of bin Laden, and he tears up. And Marcy and Lizzie are like watching the TV at the same time too. Like Marcy even says to Lizzie, like, this is a big moment. Like this is a historical moment. Gary's tearing up, but then God, of course, pops up questioning if bin Laden is really dead after the news reports on how bin Laden's body was disposed of, which was a burial at sea.
Remember when that was like the big conspiracy theory of the time?
Yeah, I do.
Like everybody was like, why didn't you take any pictures of the body?
Yeah. I mean, that story in general and Osama bin Laden's participation in 9/11 has some weird bits in it as far as his family and potential ties to US government agencies, but we're not a conspiracy podcast. Go listen to Knowledge Fight. I'm sure they've broken that down based on fucking Alex Jones's insane ramblings. This is just a loose podcast about Nic Cage movies. However, in this film, God is a conspiracy theorist who goads Gary into disbelieving Osama bin Laden's killing. Right?
Russell Brand's a conspiracy theorist? No.
Fucking
I was wondering if we were going
to
touch on that, the fact that Russell Brand is a stupid man's idea of a smart man.
I explicitly avoided
too late
talking about Russell Brand any more than we had to. But yeah, I mean, don't check out what he's done recently. That's all I'd say. So Gary says he thinks the government is lying and goes to leave. Marcy tries to get him to stay, but he runs off into the night. And we cut to Gary on a plane, and he has flashbacks of his time in Pakistan, and then flashbacks of his time with Marcy and Lizzie, and God telling him about free will. And we cut to him back at Marcy's front door, and he suggests giving up and spending time with commercials, goods and services, baby. That is what he has been missing. No more flying back and forth, just listening to some good old-fashioned American advertisements.
Getting on that My Pillow shit.
Yeah, that's
on brand.
So here you go. Listen to an ad for My Pillow.
You saying it's on brand works both ways.
Yeah, it does.
Multiple layers. Also, the My Pillow guy, that shit has got to be collapsing by now, right?
Oh, I think so. I think okay, because like one of my favorite things to do is I think I've said this before, when I'm at the gym, they have 3 TVs right next to each other. That's MSNBC, CNN, and Fox News. And I like to see what they're all talking about at any given moment.
Wait. Your gym has those 3 on lined up next to each other?
Yes. It's
fucking
bonkers.
True neutral. God damn.
Yeah. It's bonkers. It's great. But I get to watch the commercials, and like MSNBC and CNN, has like normal commercials for like Irish Spring soap and shit. Not Fox News. Fox News is Gold Scams and My Pillow. That's all they are.
And Texas catheters.
Yes.
They're still running those, right?
Yeah, they are.
Okay.
But it's mostly gold scams at this point. It's mostly like Sheriff Joe Arpaio being like, get this real gold from Arizona for some fucking reason. But anyway, one of the only advertisements they run is My Pillow, and like he's selling them at nothing right now. They're like $10 a pillow.
Cool.
So I'm gonna say something a bit controversial. I'm very picky about pillows, And if those things are dirt cheap, I kind of almost want to pick one up to see if it's a halfway decent pillow. Like
I
when
have been told it is very, very firm.
then never mind. I have no interest. I have so like I've had trouble sleeping for years and years and years, so I have a very explicit and specific pillow system that I use, and if that is compromised in any way, shape, or form, I will stay awake for a week straight. It's not healthy and not fun.
No.
But if his pillows are firm, that doesn't do anything for me. I need the exact right amount of squishiness in a pillow. Two of them actually.
Yeah, I need one at my head, and I need to be like basically putting one in a headlock.
See, I need the knee pillow. I need one bracing between my knees.
I get that. I get that.
My pillow setup is so complicated. I have two varying levels of squishy pillows for my head, which I either stack in various configurations or swap out through the course of the evening. I have one for my knees, and then I have one for under my arm for when I'm laying on my side. It's a whole system. When I sleep, I am in constant motion. If we could harness it for energy and I could just be put to sleep for forever, it would honestly solve me and the world's problems simultaneously.
I'm a 2-pillow guy, but it's like they need to be very specific pillows. Like when I go on vacation, these pillows come with me.
I do the same thing.
Me, I can sleep on a rock. I used to have bad insomnia, then I started drinking heavily.
That'll do it.
My insomnia was so bad, the whole not sleeping for a week thing, that actually happened to me in college.
Oh yeah, same, multiple times throughout my life, not necessarily just college.
It was so well, I remember it explicitly. I can't even remember how many days I went without a wink of sleep. Just I couldn't sleep. I would stay up and watch like fucking cartoons, and I knew it was another night without sleep when Gigantor the Space Age Robot came on.
Good old that came on at 28.
Like 5 a.m. or something like that. But it got so bad. A professor grabbed me as I was going to leave class, and they're like, "You need to go to the nurse." And I was like, "Why?" And they're like, "You look like you're dying." It's like I haven't been sleeping. But yeah, when you get to day like 4 or 5, unless you concentrate very hard, you can't hear people talking to you. It's all like people are teachers from Charlie Brown. It's just like wah, 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 wah. And that's it. And your vision goes real fishbowl. It's disorienting. Anyway, so well, good. Now I know I don't have to spend any fucking money on a My Pillow.
Yeah, long story short, I work with a right-wing lunatic who bought one and said it sucks. So if a right-wing lunatic says it sucks, it sucks.
That is good to know. So we cut back to, Gary having these flashbacks on the plane, and he goes back to Marcy's and says, "You know what? I'm giving it up. I'm going to let this go, and I want to spend time with you and Lizzie." Marcy seems hesitant, but she invites him in. And this is the end of the movie. But we cut to some real footage of the actual Gary on TV clips as the credits roll.
Here, and if you'll indulge me, I'll share with the class what he actually sounds like.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, I think it's necessary.
All right, here we go.
But because he had broken no laws, Pakistan didn't charge him with any crime.
All of this right here, I didn't even want any of them.
Oh, is that all we get? But
no, it keeps going, but there's like music between that we're probably going to end up getting copyrighted for. I'll chop it up to make it work.
Okay, but yeah, that's what he sounds like.
But also, we get graced with an insane postscript, which I have not been able to confirm at all. At the end of the movie, in the credits, it says that Gary is planning on using the money he made from the film to buy a new kidney so he can continue his mission. I have not been able to confirm that in any of the real life shit that I've read about this.
Look, Gary, this movie did not make a lot of money. I don't think you're buying a kidney.
I think he's probably the only one who made any money because they had to pay him out up front to make the movie.
Yeah, true.
I mean, it depends on how they fucking wrote the contract.
Yeah, it's also true. I don't know if he's getting residuals off of this one.
Yeah,
he ain't getting it from me.
Either. So let's talk about Gary and this movie and the implications, because we all have
he was on a boat.
Yeah, we all have some feelings about this, right? So
Yeah.
real quick, let's do just a brief review of the real life details. In the movie, Gary goes to Pakistan one time and considers going a second time, but this was done in a series of visits. I think he ended up in Israel twice with the hang gliding thing and dislocated his shoulder, and I think broke a leg the first time, and then did it again and crashed again and just left the mangled remains of his hang glider in Israel. He did the boat thing twice. He went to Pakistan several times and just got shipped back. He bought a gun there at some point. The movie did not go into the gun bit at all. And the real story is a little bit bleaker, right?
Yeah.
So Gary had a number of run-ins with the law, spent some time in prison, one of which was for a domestic violence incident.
Which makes the like cutesy romance throughout the movie a lot more grim compared to how it plays.
Yeah,
that sure
that
does.
part was also, as far as I can tell, entirely fabricated.
Yeah, because they needed something to pad out the runtime because they only had so many like disparate bits that they were going to do in Pakistan. Personally, I do not think that this was a very well made movie. Like, I don't think they had a lot of great ideas to throw at the wall for this, and what they did have was very thin.
It was better than I expected, to be honest. Like, there's a lot of problems with it, but I will say it was an enjoyable 90 minutes for me, at least.
It made me laugh at least 3 times, which is more than most modern comedies can do. So it's got that going for it,
which is nice.
Which is nice.
It had decent bits. I'm not sure about lionizing this story in the way that they did, particularly. I mean,
it's mocking him the whole time. I don't know if they lionize the story necessarily.
I don't know. They sanded off some.
Oh, they sand off all of the edges, but that's only to make it more marketable. I honestly think if they went harder in mocking the dude and made it a black comedy that was a bit darker and actually reckoned with this dude's life as it actually happened, it would have been a more interesting movie and maybe funnier.
Like Super?
Like Super, yeah.
So Nic Cage should have beaten somebody to death with a hammer.
Correct, yeah.
You have to follow the fucking rules. Yeah, no, like I don't know, but and I'm also not making any explicit judgment calls about this person in general, because in digging into some of the details of his life, it seems a little wacky. Like, after all of this happened, one of the parts that I found kind of interesting is after this, him and his brother started running an apartment complex in Greeley. And then he ran into some more trouble with the law afterwards because of his multiple run-ins with the justice system prior. He wasn't supposed to be owning any firearms. And after he delivered an eviction notice to one of their tenants, the woman he was evicting got 3 of her friends, and they decided to break into Gary's apartment one night to convince him to reconsider. At which point Gary pulled the gun.
That's some real gaslight gatekeep girl boss shit right there.
Yeah. At which point Gary pulled one of his firearms and fired a warning shot, scaring them all away, but of course resulted in a warrant for his arrest. So
on this podcast, we stand a felonious queen.
So he did do an interview circuit. He was paid some sum of money for the story to be optioned into a film. But again, the particulars are not necessarily as lighthearted as the movie would lead you to believe. That being said, I am staking this right now. I don't know if anything will come from it, but I am going to reach out and see if we can maybe ask this guy some questions. I am curious if he would be receptive to
3 idiots interviewing him.
Look, I just need to know if I'm going to be allowed to call him Gare Bear the entire time.
I don't know. I also can or should. These are questions we'll have to roundtable if he responds to my letters.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Sent via carrier pigeon, right?
Yeah,
These are questions for the suits in Washington to answer.
Yeah, this is legitimately interesting to me. It's the first time we've run into something where it's like there is a possibility with our notoriety and stature. I think there is a possibility we could pull an interview with one Gary Brooks Faulkner. It
Seems
is
game.
not
Yeah.
impossible. So I'm gonna see because who knows? That being said, you know, entertaining enough film. Given the timing, it's kind of understandable now why it's not more widely known. And there are some questionable decisions made throughout the course of making the film, but overall, I can't say it's bad. It got some laughs for me. It's not the best thing we've seen, but as far as based on true story things that we've seen so far, I don't know. I kind of like this better than Boy in Blue, at least.
Yeah.
It's got a better hook.
Just barely.
Yeah.
No greasy bum boys in this one, though.
That is a strike against.
Yeah, that's tough to argue with, but it's so hyper contextual. Like,
Yeah.
it's hard to compete with that. It's just funny as a term with a very specific literal application.
That shit was hilarious. Like hearing the term and then seeing what they were actually talking about. Like it had layers, like an onion or a Shrek.
There you go. Yeah, no, I agree. I gotta say, this is one of the movies I've been more confused about how I felt about after watching it. It did elicit out loud laughs for me, which does not usually happen when I'm watching something by myself. So I got to give it credit where credit's due. I do like a lot of the actors and actresses that were in this. And I think it avoided some, but certainly not all pitfalls when you're making a comedy that you're making an American comedy that involves displaying different cultures or different locations, where I would say they avoided some of the more offensive low hanging fruit, but certainly not all of them. They got hit in the face with some of those branches. So I don't know. C for effort.
Yeah, it's a C. It's a C movie.
Yeah, it's fine. It's one of those things where again we're deep enough in this where the mid list is a bloodbath. You know what I mean? So
and this is getting thrown right into that ring.
Well, what I'm saying is I don't think Army of One. I think you need to bring more people in your army if you want to get past that thick middle layer of the films we've seen so far.
Oh yeah.
When you need to get past that miasma.
Yeah, I think I don't think it even breaks into the mid, given some of the shit that we've watched. I think
this is middle low for me.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's
middle
low. It's
no G-Force. It's no Next.
You just broke Ryan.
You definitely didn't dislike this more than you dislike G-Force. You just haven't watched G-Force in a while.
No, I definitely hated G-Force way more than this movie. I hated G-Force more than most movies ever made.
Yeah,
But when you said that, my mind did go blank, and I did start hearing "Sound of Silence" by Simon and Garfunkel.
Yeah, no, I honestly, like I said, as we clear more of the field, the fog of war is peeling back a bit. I think one thing that strikes me pretty heavily is that Nic Cage films have pretty explicit stratospheres that they're divided into. You know, that's why the next
it's
time
like
we
the
have
layers
to go,
of hell.
Yeah, that yes. That's why the next time we do a ranking episode, instead of doing a ranking episode because it's too many now, we're just going to do a tier list. And I think that is going to be a little bit eye-opening.
Yeah,
because you're going to see there's layers of explicitly definable quality. And I don't think it's going to be as hard as a numerical ranking system.
Yeah.
So there you go. Army of One. It's something.
It's a movie.
It
sure is a movie.
A movie.
It's a talkie.
It's got a weird voice in it.
It does. He really does talk in this talkie.
That might be the most mind-blowing bit about it. I do not know why Nic Cage chose to do that.
I don't know either, but fuck it, I guess.
Do you think he watched any of the interviews of this real person that
Not
there
a
were
shot.
interviews
God, I hope
available
not.
to watch?
No.
It
To
would be
get in the
so cool if he
character?
didn't.
Again, I
That's
just think
nuts.
I just think he told them he'll do the movie if he can do a wacky voice.
I think
Maybe.
he told him he'd do the movie if they paid him.
Wait, this was after that period in time, right?
No, this is
No,
still like
2016?
this
he's
is
still in
2016
the-
is still in like the thralls of paying back the IRS.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
hang on. I mean, he's still making weird stuff.
Yeah, he's still pumping out whatever he gets asked to do at this point.
No. I think you guys are
Between
misunderstanding.
Worlds was 2018 and Kill Chain was 2019.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
Those are both good. That's the thing.
I think what we need to do is and I'm gonna start looking into this. I want to get a real sense of the timeline for this because I think what happened is because of the financial trouble, Cage went into a valley. But when he came out of the valley, he brought some lessons with him. Okay. So I think there was a point where he was like, I'm not necessarily saying yes to this because of the money, because that's not the driving factor anymore. I'm saying yes to this for maybe a couple of other reasons, because sometime in the shit, you realize it's not all shit. So who knows? But I think we do really need to define the timeline for that as we try and dissect motivation in some of this stuff.
Has
Yeah.
anyone actually written a good Nic Cage biography?
I don't know. That would be very interesting.
Yeah, because not for nothing. Remember,
Is this
we
gonna be
did
my
the
life's
old way.
calling?
That shit came out like this fucking year.
Yeah, no, I'm not seeing evidence that anyone has actually written like a full biography of this man's life. I think I found my life's calling.
We're on our way, man.
Yeah.
Covering the filmography is part of it. So now we're at a very important part.
Yeah, what
Where
are we
we
watching
learn-
next?
What's next?
It's not next. I know
It's
not
not
next.
next. We already
is-
did that one.
It is not next.
I wasn't here for that. We might have to do that one again.
I don't know if Josh can handle that. Anyway,
Maybe
we're
we'll do a
watching-
Patreon episode where I just talk about how cool stage magic is.
No, if we do next again, if we do next part 2 after next, it will be a Patreon episode, and I'm gonna come with more vitriol, more anger. My rage will be untethered.
The next movie is Grand Isle, starring one Nicolas Cage and one
Not two
Kelsey
Nicolas
Grammer.
Cages? What?
Fucking
Frasier
what?
hours?
Yeah, Frasier's in this one.
Yeah, all right.
Oh, he has long hair in
What's
this.
this about?
It's an American thriller. I'm not reading anything more except
man, Cage looks haggard in that poster.
so his character name is Walt, and I just see in 1988 Walt, who has long hair. Why did you have to put that in?
That's a great description, though.
Yeah.
That's a good description. I don't recognize any of these other actors.
No, I don't either.
Yeah, it might be a quick fucking housekeeping for this one. Holy shit. Okay, so the director hasn't directed very many things, but they were camera and electrical department on fucking like $1 Million Baby, Mystic River, 3 Billboards,
Oh,
Maze
wow.
Runner.
Neat.
I'm curious to see.
Maze Runner sucked shit.
Yeah, well, I mean, the books weren't particularly good either. Yeah, I don't know. I have
And each of the writers has a sub 10 number of credits in writing.
Oh yeah, this is gonna be a good one.
Yeah, sub 10 is being generous. They have 5 or less, both of them.
Yeah.
Good God. Oh, this has all the makings.
This
of,
has got some stink on it. I
yeah.
can tell it's got some stink on it.
Oh yeah.
But we've learned, listen, if we have learned one thing, it's that you can't count out a fucking wild card entry like this.
No, absolutely not. I'm actually legitimately excited for this. This sounds like it's going to go one of two ways, and I'm going to have a good time either way.
True.
This is true. These are some of the my favorite entries when they pop up, where it's like, I have never heard of this. Everything about it, like the bones that we can sort of suss out from housekeeping, are bonkers.
Multiple actors were in a movie called Anacondas, The Hunt for the Blood Orchard. Orchid, Blood Orchid.
That was the sequel to Anaconda.
Adaptation.
What was that?
Adaptation.
No, this is like the 6th sequel to Anaconda.
And I'm telling you, it is the direct,
legitimately the second one.
It is the direct sequel to Adaptation, where they find the.
You put some respect on Jennifer Lopez's acting career.
This might be Anaconda 2, because there's an Anaconda 3 that came out like 4 years later.
Yeah,
and then Anaconda's Trail of Blood, which came out in 2009. Am I gonna have to go down a rabbit hole and watch every movie with the word Anaconda in it?
Yes.
Oh, I'll do that with you. I definitely saw the one that you're talking about.
That's Holy shit! They made a Lake Placid versus Anaconda, and fucking Robert Englund is here. Oh, my cup runneth over.
Yeah, Ryan, I'm down for that watch run. Honestly, the biggest thing. So somebody trying out director with experience in the industry, but not in directing. Some very fresh CV writers, and the fact that Kelsey fucking Grammer is in it.
Yeah,
this has all the makings of a huge hit or huge whiff, and I could not be more excited.
Hey, one of the guys in this movie was apparently or is producer on a movie adaptation of one of my favorite trash comic books, Hack Slash.
Hack Slash.
It's about this girl who's a like serial killer hunter and her like reformed slasher villain who helps her out killing a bunch of serial killers.
I kind of got to read that.
It's bad, but it's fun.
That sounds like. Did you ever read Nailbiter?
Fun is right up your alley.
No, I didn't, but it looks awesome. I have seen a couple of panels from that, and it looks up my alley.
Nailbiter is cool. I bought the first like omnibus issue for Kristen because I thought that was kind of up her alley. Because it's about a town that has like more serial killers coming from it than anywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
And like a journalist is like, what's up with this? This seems like a great story, and it gets bizarre.
Yeah, so does Hack Slash. Hack Slash is like from that wave of bad girl comics where it's all like clear bad fan service, but the story is actually kind of intriguing and the art is not very good.
Hey, it's fine.
It's fine. It's fun, but it is trash.
There you go. We finished Army of One. We have our next entry, which is I think just the few details we've shared is titillating, if nothing else. And I'm excited to check it out. So in the meantime, while you're waiting for us to review this next film, please check us out on social media. You can find us on Twitter at cagefight_pod.
You can also find us on Patreon, patreon.com/Nic Cage Fight. $1 a month, people. $1 a month. Do you have any idea how much a Starbucks coffee costs? I think it's $12 nowadays. I got no fucking idea, man.
You know, every person loses on average in change $1.60 every month.
Oh,
just give us your lost money.
Yeah, that's all we're asking for. That money that's in your couch.
Give it to us before you lose it, and then you won't be losing that anymore. You'll be retaining 60 cents and getting all of our episodes without ads. It is a win-win. Math. You are 60 cents richer if you do that.
Invest it in the stock market. Line goes up, baby.
Line goes up.
The magic of compounding interest. And of course, if you're an uncle, you can check us out on Facebook. I feel like if you just look up Nic Cage on Facebook, you'll find us based on the messages we receive.
Yeah, because we just get like, oh, hi, Nic Cage.
We're going to start asking you what you want for Christmas. So, yes, thank you, as always, for tuning in. And please remember, listener, we appreciate you.
Bye-bye.